Arizona audit forging ahead, a Philadelphia delegation is visiting the Arizona Capitol. Republicans also launched election investigations in multiple states. UC Berkeley was found to spend $25 million on equity and inclusion program. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wei and Kathy show. Again, today just myself. And as you know, I explained Wei is working on his series of the principles of the U.S. funding principles. Right. So today I'm gonna bring you a couple of pieces of news, but also at the end I will also share with you another story. Actually, a recent interview I did with a former high-ranking media cadre from China, and his story 22 years ago during the June 4th massacre. So first of all, the Arizona audit. So we, just want to give you an update. That includes a hand count for over 2 million ballots, and it's a forensic audit. So actually, today, Philadelphia delegation is visiting the Arizona Capitol with the 3 Pennsylvania lawmakers checking out Arizona's audit of the 2020 election. The delegation consists of State Senator Doug Mastriano, Senator Chris Dush, and the State Representative Rob Kaufman. They met with Arizona legislators at the Capitol before traveling to the audit site to get a briefing from the forensic audit team, along with 5 Arizona state lawmakers. So the Philadelphia State Senator Doug Mastriano said in a press release that he tweeted that transparency is a must in our republic. He said that every citizen should be confident that their vote counts. So in his release, he also said the Arizona Forensic Election Audit is the most comprehensive election audit in the history. He listed 4 major states in this audit. The first is the registration and the votes cast audit. Second is the vote count and the tally audit. Third is the election voting system audit. And lastly, reported results audit. And the senator emphasized that their trip had incurred 0 taxpayer dollars. Senator Mastriano has been one of the Philadelphia State's legislature leaders in trying to find out if there is any problem with the election process. And in last November, he organized a hearing in Gettysburg that featured Rudy Giuliani and a phone call appearance by President Trump. At that time, 64 Republican legislators in Philadelphia signed a letter asking the state's congressional delegation to object to Philadelphia's electoral college votes being casted for Biden, and all 3 Philadelphia lawmakers visiting Arizona today were among them. And so it was reported that Philadelphia is possibly wanted to replicate the Arizona audit, and some other states may follow the suit. And let's take a look at the Maricopa County audit. So the audit team recently just announced that they have looked at over half of the ballots. So the total is 2.1 million. And they said that the pace of the audit is picking up rapidly. So as we can see from their tweet, it said as of June 1st, yesterday, they have surpassed counting 1.2 million ballots. Also on June 1st, they started the 3rd shift of audit volunteer team, and they had a total over 1,000 volunteers. So actually, I just checked on the Telegram. They had updates every day. I haven't checked in the afternoon today, but they had an update from last night at 8:20 p.m. They had nearly 3 pallets hand count yesterday, and total they have 14 pallets, and so now they only left 14 pallets remain to be counted. And the third shift started yesterday. It will end at midnight. Actually, early this morning at 1:30 a.m. And they had 5 hand count tables and 6 paper forensic tables in the third shift. And just by their eyeball estimation, they believe approximately 650 ballots remain to be counted, and approximately 1.2 ballots remain for forensic paper analysis. And according to the former Arizona GOP chair, Randy Pollan, he told the media that they are not anticipating the Department of Justice coming to do anything because previously some of the groups, including the Arizona Democrats, they are complaining to Department of Justice and asking them to come to do something to this audit. All right, so let's take a look at other states. So while Arizona is doing this audit, actually it really having an effect on other states. As we can see, Philadelphia legislators, they are interested. They are so interested so that they come to see how the audit goes and to talk to the Arizona legislators. So, and in other states, they are also mounting investigations into the circumstances surrounding the 2020 election. And two of the, maybe maybe you can just list. What do you think? What are the main controversial issues or concerning issues of last year's election? Whether it's the machine or mail-in ballots. So if you can just type in, I would like to know what's on your mind in terms of what are the main concerns of last year's election. So we all know, the massive mail-in ballot was done last year, and that's largely due to Democrats citing of a concern of spreading the COVID-19 at in-person polling station. So it's the first time in this country that almost all of the states are doing the mail-in ballot or absentee ballot in a larger scale than ever. And this historical, unprecedented level of absentee and the mail-in ballot is an untested approach to the U.S. election system and caused much concern. And the second one is the large amount of private fundings into the local election administrations, mainly by the Chicago-based Center for Tech and Civic Life. It was flushed with 350 million donations from the Facebook founder, Mark Zuckerberg. The huge investment raised questions regarding both the legality and the civic integrity of the private funding of election administration. And another concerning issue from the election was also with the absentee ballot, but it's the absentee ballot curing, and which means it's a technical term for fixing mistakes on the ballot. So so for some states right now, they are targeting these concerns. For example, in Wisconsin, the state assembly speaker, Robin Vos, has commissioned several retired law enforcement officers to investigate potential ballot fraud, as well as the millions of dollars of private fundings that went into the local political machine in that state. And Vos told Milwaukee Journal Sentinel that the effort was meant to clarify and to verify whether the election was conducted honestly and fairly, and if not, to provide a record supporting election law changes to prevent future reoccurrence. So in terms of the ballot curing, the absentee ballot curing, the Wisconsin Election Commission confirmed in its post-election report in January that election workers cured many more ballots last fall than ever before. So on its report, it says that the statewide absentee ballot rejection rate was exceptionally low in November. It was at 0.2% statewide. And comparing to the year before, in April 2020, it was 1.8%. So it's kind of abnormal. Therefore, the Wisconsin lawmakers are doing something. They are moving to stop election workers across the state from fixing the mistakes on the absentee ballots. Today, it just happened today, the Assembly's Committee on Campaigns and Elections advanced a assembly bill that would clarify that only voters or their witnesses can correct a mistake on an absentee ballot. So this bill is called Assembly Bill 198. It requires that the election clerks must contact the voter if they made a mistake, or the witness if they made a mistake in filling out their portion of the absentee ballot. Only the voters or the witness can correct those mistakes. So they are really tightening this up. But this bill got objection from the Democrats on the election committee, who said that this change will mean some legally cast ballots won't be able to be counted. While the elections committee chief, who is a Republican representative, Janelle Brandegee, said that the tightening of the rules for who can fix the mistakes on the absentee ballot does not infringe on anyone's right to vote. So this bill, AB 198, now heads for a vote in the full assembly. And but someone was estimating that it might got vetoed by the governor, Governor Tony Evers, because the governor has said for months that he will not sign any new laws that make it tougher for people to vote. So we'll follow up and see what's going to happen. Let's go to Georgia. In Georgia, we all know Fulton County is the state's largest and a key bastion of Biden's support in his narrow victory in the historical red state. So how the county handled the election has become a source of controversy since last November. We all remember the video showing that on the election night, the county, seems to dismiss the majority of its election staff from its ballot processing operation. But then afterwards, a crew of workers came back and continued to count the ballot. So you probably still remember that scene on the video. So Republican voters in Georgia led an effort now to inspect nearly 150,000 absentee ballots in the county. On May 21st, Henry County Superior Court Judge Brian Amero, he ordered that this review to go ahead. But Fulton County officials filed complaints to oppose to this investigation. So Judge Amero planned to have a meeting later this week to determine the process of this review. Now, in New Hampshire, town of Windham, there was an audit going on. There was an audit, and several Republicans were shorted combined several hundred votes in the state representative races, and the auditors have been struggling to explain what's the reason. The auditors claimed to have determined that a voting machine likely caused a seize in the ballots that had run directly through Democratic names, leading vote tabulators to improperly award votes to the Democratic candidates. Officials have insisted that the corrected results have no effect on the ultimate result of the race in any way. And in Utah, actually, there's someone put out a petition to urge the Senate to issue subpoenas for all the ballots, voting machines, system files, etc., and used in November election for an independent forensic audit. So it looks like the forensic audit in Arizona had some effects in quite a few states, and we shall see what's going to happen in the following months. All right, so let's go to UC Berkeley in California, which only just a few dozens miles away from here. So UC Berkeley was found that they employs 150 professionals and 200 additional students, total 400 staff dedicated to addressing quote-unquote systematic inequalities in the university, and they spent $25 million a year in such program. So that's according to the documents obtained by the College Fix. In the document, there is an 8-page long job description of a new vice chancellor for equity and inclusion, showing that this public research institution spends $25 million annually to support this 400 full and part-time staff to run the diversity and the inclusion, equity-related program. So what are the programs? These programs include staff diversity, formal collaborations with people and culture, the others, and the Belongings Institute. I don't know if you know what that means. And the American Cultures Engaged Community Teaching Program, the Basic Needs Center, and the other programs serving a broad array of constituencies. The Division of Equity and Inclusion also invites students to report so-called hate incidents to the University of California's statewide intolerance report. This job notice stated that the hiring will advance Berkeley's public mission and the goals of becoming a Hispanic serving institution and an anti-racist campus by boldly establishing new paradigms and implementing strategies and tactics that further embed diversity, equity, inclusion, belongings, and justice practices into the fiber of the Berkeley campus. This notice further notes that the new hire will oversee 30 dedicated academic and administrative department level chief diversity officers across the Berkeley campus. According to this document, 58% of its $25 million diversity budget is from campus and the state funds. Or, that just means the tax money and tuitions. So the major amount is from taxpayers and students' tuition. 31% is from federal and the state public service grants. Well, that's still taxpayers' money. And 11% is from philanthropy and private grants. So actually, I tried to contact UC Berkeley spokesperson Dan, and he referred me for his comments, and he referred me to his colleague, saying that my question would be better addressed to people that work in that particular division. However, his colleague has not been able to find a division leader who is available to talk to me. The spokesperson previously told College Fix that $25 million equity and inclusion budget makes up only less than 1% of the university's total budget, and that the school has no plans to seek any increase in funding for the division. If we just compare, the University of Michigan's diversity budget is nearly $7 million per year. In 2018, a state economics professor caused a stir when he reported that Michigan paid roughly 50 diversity employees, and compared to UC Berkeley, now they have 400 full-time and part-time. So let's see, what does it do? So despite UC Berkeley's hefty diversity budget, only 3.7% of the undergraduate students at Berkeley in 2020 school year are African Americans. Hispanic students makes up 18% of the undergraduate students' body, while less than 1% of the students are Native American or Alaskan Native. Meanwhile, over 39% of the Berkeley undergraduate students' body is classified as Asian. And this fact was left off the job notice. So how to view UC Berkeley's large budget in its equity and inclusion program? I talked to Kenny Xu, remember the young author. He's based in DC, a writer who focuses on the identity politics. And he also is the author of An Inconvenient Minority, The Attack on Asian American Excellence and the Fight for Meritocracy. So I asked him, Kenny, how does he see this issue?
Well, it shows you the financial incentive for people to continue race pandering. Diversity and inclusion is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Every Fortune 500 company has it. By the way, this always means Blacks and Hispanics, and to a lesser extent, women. Oftentimes, these exclude Asians because Asians are not really a minority. And it's all about promoting people and hiring people in a preferential way. That's what it's about. It's about trying to gain control of the hiring process and preferring certain people, usually their allies ideologically, and gaining power in the institution. So it's no surprise to me that a school like UC Berkeley would spend $25 million on their diversity and inclusion program, nor is it a surprise to me that UCLA would pay $500,000 for their chief diversity officer. It's all part of the industry. It's all part of the same plan.
Mm-hmm. And they hired 400 people in UC Berkeley for that program, the staff.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because the California Proposition 209 already bans discrimination on the basis of race, and yet they hire 400 people to do what? What are they doing? Their goal, they've already stated a goal to have 25% Latino population, even though that's banned. You're not allowed to have racial goals for your university population. That's not allowed. And most likely it's this 400-person diversity department that is lobbying for these kinds of unconstitutional practices.
And on the other hand, we all know that the tuitions for higher education just such a burden for a lot of students. How do you see such a phenomenon?
I think it's a complete waste of money. I really do. There's no reason why you should spend $25 million to hire 400 people to effectively try to promote a zero-sum game, promote preferential treatment. You could have devoted that money to education, to scholarships, or you could have just lowered the cost of tuition, which everybody wants. I don't think that this is something that the majority of Americans want. They don't want preferential treatment. They don't want people to get in the way of meritocracy.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to add?
Well, in my book, An Inconvenient Minority, I investigate the deeper areas of discussion regarding the diversity and inclusion movement, some of its deeper roots. It has a lot of its roots in far more insidious things. that I'd be happy to share in my book, An Inconvenient Minority.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy.
All right. So that's Kenny Xu. And his book is coming out, has already come out. So yeah, if you're interested. According to the Harvard Business Review, thousands of studies have conducted over the past several decades to determine whether the diversity programs work, and the few have shown any benefit. The author found that it shouldn't be surprising that most diversity programs aren't increasing diversity. It also says, despite a few new bells and whistles, courtesy of big data, companies are basically doubling down on the same approaches they've used since the 1960s, which often makes things worse, not better. The author found laboratory studies show that the force feeding diversity training can activate bias rather than stamp it out. So spend $25 million, actually it might just have opposite effect as they wish. How about that? So yeah, I saw a lot of the comments saying that you are missing jokes. I'll try to see if I can have a joke at the end of the program. And so actually next I would like to bring you a little bit information about June 4th student movement. This year is the 32nd anniversary. So I don't know, in regards to June 4th student movement and the Tiananmen massacre, what would you like to know? If you can type in there. So today I'm going to just tell you a very brief story, but on Friday I will bring you the story of the tank man, actually, not the one standing in front of the tank, but actually he was hurt by the tank on Tiananmen Square. So yeah, from 2 days from now, it will be the June 4th anniversary. And so I actually just interviewed a former high-ranking cadre from the CCP media. And he used to, when he was in his 40s, 32 years ago, and is the chief of editor of Hainan Daily, which is in the southern China, and it's a very high-ranking position. So actually, he later decided. Initially, he was just following the CCP's line, not to really reporting what's happening in Beijing, but when the April 26th, the editorial came out. So this editorial actually just says that have to fight against this unrest happening in Beijing with a very clear-cut stand. So as a senior person in the CCP's media, his name is, by the way, Mr. Chen Kai. And Mr. Chen he realized it's must from Deng Xiaoping, who at that time is the leader of the CCP. So normally they have to put such editorial on their. Even though it's a local paper, it's provincial, the paper for the province. So it's not a small paper. So normally they will put on the headline, right, the front page for such editorial. But he decided not to put on the headline, but rather put on the fourth page, so which is buried. And so what he did, also among other things, how he reported the related stories during that time, just made him pay a big price. So he was just crushed. Okay, and fortunately he was able to escape to the United States, and then he was able to kept doing his journalist work. He had been a reporter for Radio Free Asia for the past 20-some years and just retired last year. So when I asked him, he didn't bring anything from China. If he stayed in China, kept, just following the party line, he can be much higher position. So I asked him, do you regret? And he immediately said, no regret. Because he said, if I stay there, either I will be really feel, tortured because he has to follow the party line, or otherwise, will be just persecuted, right? But he said actually June 4th student movement, the Tiananmen massacre is a tragedy, but it actually saved him. So he had a new life. That's the exact word he said. And he said between the following the party line or following his own conscience, he chose the latter. And so even though he was purged, he lost everything, cannot go back to China for 30 years, he had no regret. And he had a lot more to say, and he just said, even though I lost the land, but I got the blue sky, and the sky in this free world, in this great country, is just so blue that he's so happy because he can maintain to follow his conscience, to have the freedom, have the human dignity, and the right not to fear. So that's Mr. Chen's brief story. I will try to bring more of his views. He also talked about what's happening in the United States and the relationship between U.S. and China, how to view CCP from his angle. So I will try to see if I can do an English version of his interview for you. So again, let's review. I saw Kitty Hawk in the beginning already typed out the Chinese words I told you last time. 爱美国自由 love the United States, freedom and liberty. Remember, love is 爱, and 美国 the beautiful country, 自由 the freedom and the liberty. So at this moment, during these days, as June 4th anniversary coming soon, I think it's even more significant for us to remember that. All right, so to conclude, I will try to tell you a little joke. So actually, it's also a true story. It happened to my friend who came to the United States a few years ago when she first came, and then she was able to maneuver around, going to shopping in the grocery store. And then one day she told me her experience. She said every time when she checked out at the counter, the cashier always asked her, cash back? So she was like, wow, the Americans are so generous. I spent something, I bought some grocery, and they will give me cash back. But initially she was just, didn't feel good, like she was able to take it, right? So every time she just said no. But it happened quite a few times. And one time she just felt, okay, since, it's being asked for so many times. So she thought, today I spent $10. And maybe, then she said, when the cashier said cash back, and she said, okay. And the cashier said, how much? So she thought, $5. Then she got $5 from the cashier. But later on, she found out that her bank account was deducted for the $5. So, yeah, and well, that's again, it's the the cultural language difference, right? And also like the smoke-free. And initially, some immigrants came here and just said, "Wow, smoke!" Because in China, there was still a lot of people smoking, and said, "Wow, free cigarettes." right? It's the same thing. All right, so hope this will bring you a little bit lighthearted, and really appreciate you being with me today. And so we'll see you on Friday. We'll bring you a very special story about the June 4th. All right, take care. Good night. Bye-bye.